Welcome back, students and young professionals in marketing and advertising. My name is Broxton Davis. I'm a performance media analyst at one of the top advertising agencies in the world. I'm also the host of the BroxtenDigital Show, which is my podcast where I bring on some of the brightest minds in marketing and advertising and interview them in the sense of giving students and young professionals the insights and advice that they need to succeed, whether it be the job hunt, the first career job, the second move after your first role, the insights and advice that you need and the questions you're asking. Those answers are here on the show. But today, we have another awesome guest. This guest definitely brings a super unique perspective and unique experience. She kind of has had a very long career, and contrary to a lot of other guests, has kind of stayed at the same place and built a career with, starting with a company where it's kind of just starting out and one of the original members of the company to now, upholding a whole branch of it. She's in the SEO space and has really just built a really awesome career and got to build her own really, full set of systems, SEO, things that she's going for. So, one of those roles where she's kind of got to do her own thing and build something that, not a lot of people have the autonomy to build. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to turn it over and introduce to you Dipa Gandhi.
Hey, Broxton, thank you so much for that intro. It's great to be on this show.
Yeah, heck yeah. Thank you so much for coming on today. I know you're super busy and start pretty early in the morning. So, thanks for making the time to hop on and excited to kind of hear what you have going on. So, if you want to just kind of start by, going over, what exactly you're doing now, the company you're working for, everything like that, and we'll just kind of get started there.
Yeah, sounds great. Um, so, my name is Deepa. I am the Director of SEO at 99 Calls. We are a digital marketing company helping home service businesses like your plumbers, HVACs, electricians just build their business and build the brand and grow their business and help them get some more leads. Um, I've been with the company for 15 years now. The company is about 15 and a half to 16 years old. So I was one of the first employees and I'm still with them. It's a great company to work with. I love the team. But we started off 15 years ago pretty much just kind of building a website, building our clients' Google business profile, online listings, and they would get ranked right off the bat into a great position, pretty much first page of Google. And it was so easy back then. So we've had the liberty of seeing, just watching the SEO space evolve from what it was back then, 15 years ago, to what it is now, which is quite different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was definitely one of the main things I want to talk with you about today. It was just the amount of change and crazy things you've seen over, being at the same place, going from, your original system and everything that you built out when you guys, first were kind of getting started as a business to now, how in depth and pretty crazy some of these Google setups and everything can be. I think it kind of rings true in a lot of different branches of marketing. It's an industry where everything's evolving very rapidly, and the people who can kind of adjust and continue building, end up like a company like 99 Calls where, 15 years later, you're definitely not doing the same thing, but you still got the same business and, still getting after it and going with the changes where, a lot of people kind of fall off or are just, it can be a lot to kind of stay up with everything. I guess early in your career, then, what were some of the ways, you were able to stay up and kind of roll with the changes? Because I know that's something a lot of young people can kind of struggle with early in their career.
Um, yeah, so from the marketing perspective, starting with the SEO space, you just kind of really have to be on top of all the different changes that Google's going through. Um, And, the best way to do that is there are specific sites or, newsletters, podcast, YouTube videos, and people to follow on LinkedIn. So there's so many resources out there. The best thing is just to stay connected, network, follow as many people and as many podcasts and newsletters that you can. Um, even in just your free time, scan. You don't have to read each article thoroughly, but at least scan through them, be on top of all those changes. I think that's the best way to just kind of stay on top of all the changes that are happening and stay connected with some of the new and more upcoming people in podcast.
Yeah, no, I think that's some super important advice and definitely super true and like across any area of marketing. If you're a meta ad specialist, you could do the same thing with Meta. If you're a Google ad specialist, same thing with Google, but really just making it like a consistent daily effort to really stay up to date. Because I think that's kind of what you have to do nowadays to stay up to date. Is it's like a daily thing. A lot of these things can change, multiple times even in a week I've seen. So
Definitely. I know I go on vacation for like a week or whatever, and there's so many changes just coming back from vacation. It's almost hard to keep up with, but somehow you find a way. If you're following the right people and the right podcasts and newsletters and everything, you can. It's very doable.
yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. And there's yeah, like you said, just so many free resources, and just it's more so the effort of going out and doing it is really your only cost there. So that's just some great advice. But I definitely want to talk a little bit more about your experience. We kind of just walked through the basics of how things kind of started to where they are now. But I guess just want to dig a little bit deeper, and especially when you were in those early stages of your career, kind of still developing things and everything like that. Where were some of those areas where you were helping build the 99 Calls Foundation into what it is today? Where you maybe had some of the biggest takeaways or just learned the most valuable skills, and maybe in the moment you weren't so sure, maybe didn't realize it.
Sure. So, I mean, honestly, when I started off in the SEO space, I didn't even know what SEO was. So I started off as data entry. And then just, website tweaks here and there. Okay, you want to change your business hours? We can change your business hours, things like that, very basics. But then slowly it just kind of evolved into me learning what the SEO space is. And I think understanding just basically understanding what it takes to get your website ranking a little bit better and learning that process. So that was one of the key factors that really helped into starting off in SEO and then building from there, as well as back then I didn't even know all these directory listings existed like Yelp and Houzz and Google Business Profiles. Like, what is that? Um, so understanding which directory listings really matter, and slowly I realized that Google was like the number one listing that everybody has to have and you have to be on. So just building that out and optimizing it. So it was more from starting off just getting to know these platforms and then building from there.
Yeah, and I think, what you're saying is probably something ringing through a lot of different young professionals' heads. Just like, you get in, you get out of college, and you're super excited to jump in and, start making a difference, start making some of these cool commercials that you've seen on TV or across social media. And there is that, kind of time period, I think, where you have to just, accept that there's a learning curve and really invest that time in yourself to really understand what you're doing. And I know, like, for me, I definitely was a little bit too ambitious when I first started in my first role after college, and definitely got myself into some projects where I was like, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I definitely need some help. Where if I maybe would have been a little more upfront about what I was capable of, that I needed to maybe learn some more, I wouldn't have been in that situation. So I think that's just super true and super relatable, honestly. Would you say like there was any specific ways you went about reminding yourself, or even just going about making that daily commitment to under having that foundational understanding of what you're doing before thinking, hey, I want to grow this and scale it up type of thing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, of course, you have your day to day work that you do for work, like your job or your tasks that you need to complete. But take it a step further, like really dig into what exactly it is that you're doing. Research some of those things. So for me back then, it was, oh, okay, like this isn't just data entry, this is SEO. So then learning what exactly SEO was, what it meant, what the acronym meant. So it took a lot of research. And then slowly, once you're starting to do some of that research, you understand who the big players are in that space. So then it's starting to build up your network, LinkedIn network, follow the right people. Um, and you just kind of grow from there. That's how you understand the SEO space more, with any career for that matter. That's how you understand, the changes that are happening, all the latest, most recent updates. And for digital marketing, with AI and everything, it's definitely something that you want to stay on top of, but that might not just be in the digital marketing space. It could probably apply to just about any career.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more that totally applies to, anywhere in marketing. Staying on top of that stuff is really going to be, something that you need to do. And I love that you said, taking your daily work and thinking about that on a deeper level, because it's like maybe you don't need to spend 2 or 3 hours sitting at your computer after you get done working, doing marketing research or, industry research, like you would say. But actually just digging into what you're doing in your day to day and thinking, I'm definitely even thinking here now I should start doing this more of like, what am I doing here? How can I kind of make this like a mini case study for myself almost? And, that kind of just gives you, you can probably develop insights to learn off of on a day to day basis, just, analyzing your work like that. So that's some super cool advice.
Definitely.
I guess too. So, still thinking back to those more so early days. Another big thing we talk about a lot on the show is networking. And you've brought it up a few times. Obviously, your network is super important. Was there like a moment in your career that you realized like, hey, I really need to take this networking thing serious, or were you just always naturally kind of somebody who is able to meet people and put yourself out there?
No, I definitely, like when I started off in this whole space, my LinkedIn network was so small. It was probably limited to just, friends and family, people that you know. Um, but then once you start understanding what this space is about and how to get your name out there, how to get your company's name out there, that's when you really start taking networking to the next level. It's like, okay, I don't know this person, but I definitely need to start following this person. And that it just kind of grows from there.
Definitely no. And I think that's, something that definitely as a student, especially, or maybe even a young professional who thinks, maybe these people don't have the time of day or will look at my account and think, who the heck is this person? I think that's super important to say. Like, you need to identify people and be like, I don't know you, but I'm going to follow you, or I don't know you, but I'm going to put my name out there to you. That's just so important. And I think something that a lot of people can struggle with. When you first started doing that, is that something, was maybe that felt a little uncomfortable at first? Obviously now, I've seen you're pretty active on LinkedIn and everything, so definitely some growth there. But was that something that was a little nerve-wracking when you first started out?
Oh, definitely. When you start out, you start thinking, okay, if you start following somebody or if you request a connection with somebody, that what is that person going to think? Like, who the hell are you to ask me for a LinkedIn request, a connection? Um, so, yeah, I always did give it a second thought when I first started off if I wanted to connect with that person or follow that person. But now it's like, everybody does it. People start following me and I don't know who they are. People start asking me for a connection request. I don't know who they are. It's natural. That's just part of networking. And that's just kind of how you build your network and get your word out there. In fact, up until recently, I would say I would still hesitate to even post something, some sort of update or whatever it is, thinking, okay, what if my verbiage is kind of wrong and it's not 100% accurate? What if I have something off? Um, but that's how you learn. It's always about learning from other people plus your own mistakes. So if something is wrong in your LinkedIn post, that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a super, great way to kind of wrap up the fact that it is nerve-wracking, but at the same time, like it's totally fine if you mess up. Like I know even today I started posting on LinkedIn more so like a year ago. I was like, hey, I'm gonna start posting 3 times a week and see what this turns into.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that led to me making my own podcast and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I interact with a ton of people. I've met a ton of my guests and people who watch my show through LinkedIn. And it's been an amazing channel that I think my life would probably be quite a bit different if I didn't say, hey, let's start posting 3 times a week. But when I look back on those posts, I'm definitely not like, oh yeah, I had this figured out. Like I look back on them, I'm like, oh my God, I would not share this with my network today. So I think that's just a great point. And also like I think what you're saying is you kind of just got to be like a little bit vulnerable with yourself and say, I'm just gonna do it. I don't care, because you can sit there and just beat yourself up and constantly worry about it.
Yeah, and if somebody points out your mistakes, it's okay. You don't know everything. You're not going to know everything. Even when you think you know everything, you're not going to know everything. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I mean, it's refreshing to have haters, honestly. Like if somebody does point out a mistake, it's like, hey, how are you ever gonna get better if everybody just applauds you all the time? So I think
Yes.
that's a great point. With that too, just a little bit more on the networking piece. I guess, later in your career now, is there anything you're doing to, be a little bit more strategic about your network, or anything that maybe you started doing that you wish you would have started a little bit earlier?
Um, I'll start with the latter part of your question first. I do wish that I had started networking on LinkedIn a little bit earlier in my career. It takes time. It takes time to put yourself out there. And like you said, you are in a vulnerable state, so you hesitate to do that. But I wish I had done that sooner. It definitely helps. So anybody who's listening should definitely do that. And then the first part of your question, I'm sorry, what was that again? If you don't mind repeating it.
Yeah, no, just like anything that you're doing, strategically now, realizing that anything that you're doing differently now to, make it a little more strategic and, put some maybe data behind it to help grow your network.
Sure. So one thing that I just recently started doing is, we started doing for the company more like case studies, real world examples. So I've been starting to post some of that information, not just on our company's LinkedIn page, but also my personal. Um, and I think that's just sometimes people trust the personal LinkedIn pages a little bit more than the company LinkedIn pages. So I think that makes a little bit of difference. So if you feel like if you're a business owner or whatever, and you feel like just exclusively posting to your business LinkedIn page would be sufficient, I would say give it a second thought, and include that same type of post on your personal LinkedIn page. I do think the reach might be further and the trust factor might be a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's some great advice, and just goes to say like that's just one of the most important things on LinkedIn and just in networking in general is like being very personable, putting yourself out there authentically. I think, a lot of people who maybe even are automating a lot of posts with AI, that kind of thing, you just don't see the same kind of reach as when, you get on your personal account and kind of authentically put yourself out there. At least I've noticed, the best kind of responses and posts that perform the best when I, just hop on and type something up rather than strategically plan something out or have AI write me different variations of something. So just some great advice. I kind of want to switch it up now and talk about something a little bit different. With you kind of being in the same spot, your whole career being at the same company and, working your way through up through there. Obviously, you must have some sort of passion for, SEO and what you're able to do on your day to day. Is that something early on you were just like, all right, I'm actually pretty passionate about that? Or is it something maybe you developed over time and maybe at first it wasn't, you're on fire about SEO?
Yeah, that actually for me is a very big question, just because my journey was kind of long in my career, which you probably noticed on if you looked at my LinkedIn profile. I have a master's in animal physiology and biochemistry, so the field is absolutely different from what I'm currently working in. Um, so I did have several changes during my career. I started off working in that space too. I was doing HIV research. Um, and then from there, I moved on to working in mutual fund management at State Street. And the reason for that change is, you might love a field, you might love learning about a specific field, but then when you're in the workspace, um, the work environment is just so completely different from what you actually studied in school. It doesn't mean that you don't love studying or researching that area. You just might not enjoy working in that space. And that was the reason for my change. So I went into mutual fund accounting at State Street, worked in that space for 3 years, took a break from work entirely just to build my family, start a family and everything. And then coming back into the workforce is always a challenge when you take a little bit of a break. Um, so I was given an opportunity to start off working from home. That way I can still look after the family and also get started back in the career. And the job that was offered to me was data entry. And that's how I came into the whole SEO space, is that data entry actually turned into being, organic SEO and lead generation.
Dang, yeah, that is so cool, and definitely just goes to show, where you're sitting right now definitely is not probably where you're going to be sitting at the end of your career. Even, you're pretty far from the end of your career. So even just,
Absolutely.
halfway through, having some crazy changes. So if you are somebody who's maybe not super happy in your current role or thinking, I don't know if this is for me. I mean, look at Deepa as an example of, you can really go out there and go after what you want to do and it'll all work out. It might not look the prettiest on your resume or it might be a little bit stress inducing when you're updating your LinkedIn, but like it'll work out. And it just goes to show that chasing, something you are passionate about and something you actually want to do in your day to day is true. But back to that kind of, passion piece. So now that you've been doing SEO for so long, would you be able to confidently say, "Hey, I'm pretty passionate about doing SEO"?
Oh, absolutely. I think if I hadn't, I wouldn't have lasted 15 years in this space. But the constant changes, they're stressful, but at the same time, it's so interesting. It's so interesting how all these different algorithms work. It's so different. It's so interesting how just basic human psychology and things like that also play a role into rankings, organic rankings for your website, organic rankings for your GBP, and things like that. Um, and just how everything's just constantly changing, especially now with the AI stuff. So even AI is playing a role into SEO and how you're getting ranked and all of that. So yeah, just staying on top of all the changes and everything, it definitely keeps things interesting in your career. So yeah.
Definitely, and I mean, I can tell you're passionate about it just from hearing you say all that. Like, obviously, you have a lot going on in your mind about SEO on the day to day, and I think the big takeaway here for any students and young professionals listening is like when you kind of find that thing that you're that on fire about, and you can sit there and talk about all day, or are super interested to do more research in. That's probably something you should lean in on more, and like kind of Deepa's example shows, it doesn't always, show itself to you right out of college or within your first couple roles. So
Yep.
just some great advice and, a great example that kind of, can help give us young professionals and students just a realistic view of, everything doesn't play out exactly how you want right when you want it, but it does work out over time.
Absolutely. No, you follow what you're passionate about and success will come.
Yeah, that is definitely a great way to put it. Now, before we hop into the rapid fire value segment, I do just have a couple more questions, more so focused on just what you're doing now in your day to day today. So, in today's role, obviously you've come a long way from when you first started as a data entry analyst. So, what are, I guess, some of the main skills or things you're doing nowadays that are, really helpful, really moving the needle for you that maybe 15 years ago, Deepa would have definitely been able to use and leverage earlier on, just starting out.
Okay, so there are several pieces, I guess, that I've become an expert in, which, um, it just happened over the years of being in this space and knowing some of those things right off the bat might have helped a little bit more. But basically, your Google Business Profile, just what it is, how to set it up, how to get it optimized, maybe the ranking factors that go into the GBP and all of that. So that's something that has grown on me. Website optimization with SEO, what is really moving the needle to get even mentions in the AI overviews now, which is a far more recent thing. Um, but compared to when I started off and what it is now, it's like before it was just getting a website up there with great content on there. Now it's like, okay, what does it take to not only get the website ranking in your Google searches so the website shows up, but also what does it take to get mentions in the AI overviews? Um, so all of that evolving, and I think starting off with knowing some more of that information rather than learning all of that information, spending a couple years in learning that information definitely would have helped. Um, but now the AI overviews are so recent. So with all the changes, you look back and you're like, oh, okay, I wasn't too far off then. I wasn't so far behind.
Well, I think it's a really great point, and like something that young professionals and students need to really realize is like, you saying that having that knowledge of being an expert in those certain different things would have been so helpful before. This is kind of the first time in history where the younger generation has crazy access to all this information, whether it be through AI, through just, being able to search proficiently on Google, but really the information to become a subject matter expert and, really anything in digital marketing, the info is there. And my generation is really the first one who's had all that readily available at their fingertips at this age. I know, like 15 years ago, if you wanted to become a Google business profile expert, I don't think there was any articles or any way for you to easily type a couple things on a keyboard and start figuring that out. Was there?
It was basic Google searches. And sometimes, you can't even find the right articles or the right resources unless you put in the correct keywords that are going to get those resources found. So that was the biggest challenge is, all right, I'm starting off as data entry. This is actually called SEO. Like, how do you figure that out? There's it's that gray line where you have to have the right Google searches or the right keywords, and then finding the right resources to actually understand that.
Yeah, and nowadays it's, easier than ever to find what you're looking for on the
Absolutely.
internet. So just how much it's changed. I definitely think like huge takeaway that I hope students and young professionals have is just like go out and use that information. Like, people like yourself who are sitting in their career now at our age would have, who knows what you would have done to be able to get your hands on that information just because of how much further it can move you in your career, knowing that kind of stuff early on, rather than like you said, sometimes it takes a couple years of trial and error just to kind of figure things out and, understand what you're doing.
Yeah, and now it's like it's at your fingertips. You have all these different platforms where it's giving you all the answers. You just have to be willing to learn.
Yeah, literally, it's insane the cool stuff you can do. Like I
Mhm.
literally am thinking of a bunch of different ways that, somebody could go in and kind of learn what I'm doing in my day-to-day job just by, being proficient with AI and watching some YouTube videos. It's
Yep.
kind of crazy what you can learn nowadays. But so yeah, that was awesome. We covered, your whole career and got to hear some cool stories along the way. I definitely think your entry into marketing and everything is so cool and is just a huge testament to like, you really can do what you want in this industry, regardless of what kind of person you are, what kind of situation you have at home, or, what you strive to be later on in life. You can kind of get into marketing and advertising and, build that out with all the different kind of career options. Like you said, you were able to work from home when you were first coming back into your career life and everything like that. You don't see that in every industry. So I just think it's super cool and refreshing to hear that, being in an industry where you can do that is awesome. So props to you for that. It sounds like you've been able to kind of, do what you want and experience the things you want to experience, and it has worked out awesome for you. But
Yep.
to kind of move on to the next segment, this is a rapid fire value segment where the main goal here is to just provide actionable insights and advice for the students and young professionals that are listening that they can, kind of implement in their day-to-day life right now and start seeing a difference and, help them achieve that goal, whether it be the first job hunt, trying to figure out things in their first role, or maybe move into that second role that they're pivoting to. But yeah, to get started here, what right now would you say are the best, one, two, or three, free or low cost tools that you're using in your day to day that are really moving the needle for you?
Um, and we're talking digital marketing space, right?
Yeah, digital marketing, productivity, SEO, that kind of thing.
Okay. Um, so very specific, like technical digital marketing tool is SEMrush. We use that all the time. It's a great tool. Um, there's a lot of information in there, so if you're not used to the platform, there's definitely a little bit of learning curve there, but totally worth it. Um, so another free tool, which may not really be a tool, it's more a platform, but like I said, like YouTube and LinkedIn, great resources, great place to just have all those podcasts and the right people to follow and newsletters and all kinds of information available to you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy you say that. And I know like you hesitate to say it because it almost sounds like generic advice, but like I think it's super great when you kind of match what a lot of the other professionals I've interviewed have said, just because it is so important. And I feel like a lot of people my age are sleeping on it. Like hop on YouTube and throw your thoughts on there, record a
Yep.
video of you talking about something trending and talk about it, or hop on LinkedIn and share what you think on SEO, and who knows what opportunities or doors it'll open for you. So don't feel like you're giving generic advice there. I think you're giving really important advice that, we need to hear. With that though, moving into something that you talk about a ton as a student and as an early career is, the different skills you develop, whether they be hard skills or soft skills.
Mhm.
So what would you say right now is the number one soft skill that us students and young professionals should really be focusing on in 2026?
Um, Soft skill, I would say just speaking skills, whether it's speaking in public, um, one on one with somebody, or whether it's speaking through like online forms, like LinkedIn, whatever social media that's professional other than LinkedIn. But really speaking skills, getting your name out there, networking, talking to people, communicating. I think that might be the biggest asset that you can have. And sometimes being able to communicate well is going to get you so much further than any other technical skill that you might have.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you like mentioned all the different ways you have to communicate because like there's something to be said about, you kind of have to master the different ways to communicate in different ways. Like the way you speak to a group compared to the way you speak in a one-on-one with your manager compared to the way you send an email to your team. It's all different forms of communication that you kind of have to learn. So definitely something that young people I think should be focusing on and maybe not something you think you should spend a lot of time on, but definitely a sneaky one that I think you should be focusing on.
Yeah.
With the flip side of that, though, what would you say is the number one hard skill or technical skill that we should be locking in on this time?
Right now, in this current day and age, I think being able to use AI, just any type of AI platform, any basic one from ChatGPT to something even more advanced like Cursor AI or whatever to help you with code. But definitely being able to use AI. If you can use that, it's so fantastic. It can answer so many questions for you. And if you don't know how to use any other hard skill or technical skills, AI will help you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we're definitely headed to a time where hiring managers and, people who are running teams at a high level are going to want to see people my age being able to be proficient in AI. Like it's almost going to be something that's expected and probably, blatantly talked about in interviews. Maybe we're not quite there yet with all the companies, but I'm glad you said that just because I foresee, that's kind of where we're heading. And a lot of the professionals I've interviewed have, kind of said the same thing.
Yeah.
With that though, I don't know if did you have any freelance experience, beforehand, or have you kind of always just worked with 99 calls as far as your SEO experience goes?
It was pretty much just working with 99 calls.
Okay, gotcha. We'll skip the freelance one just because, like, unless you do have any killer freelance advice for anybody that might be looking to pick up a freelance client while they're in college or anything.
Um, Skill wise,
Anything, yeah. What if you just had one piece of advice to give anybody? Because I know just a lot of students. It's hard to get an internship nowadays, so just being able to get
yes,
some of that, experience can be a game changer.
sure. I think, again, with freelancing, the biggest thing is, again, LinkedIn networking. I think that's huge. Um, and that's the biggest way you're going to get your name out there and what you do. And that's how people are going to notice.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's like how I got my freelance clients in college that I had was just like people next thing you know, you have a couple
Hmm.
conversations, and next thing you know, somebody's paying you to help them with some work. So I think
Exactly.
that's some great advice and definitely super true. Moving on though, what would you say right now is maybe the number one free learning resource that, younger people might be sleeping on or just not aware of?
Um, let's see, free learning resource. I think it's hard to really pinpoint one for, any one particular industry or niche. But I feel like if you find the right podcast or newsletters, there are so many out there. Just go and find them. Whatever industry you're in, there are so many free podcasts, newsletters, any type of informational material. Just spend a little time and follow it, read it, skim it, watch it, whatever the mode is.
No, definitely. I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is like there's really never been a point in history where there's this much information just
Hmm.
actively available. And it's kind of crazy. Like I didn't really realize until I started getting into podcasting, there's millions of people sitting around every day recording themselves talk and trying to teach other people. So it's just super cool. And I think, kind of to your point, you could spend, days just sitting around listening to podcasts, watching learning resources and breaking them down and learning a ton from all different kinds of perspectives. So
Yeah.
and here's the last one I got for you, Deepa, is who would you say, one, two, maybe even three people that you would recommend all students and young professionals should be connected with and interacting with on LinkedIn?
Ooh, that's a tough question. It very much depends on what industry you're in. But I feel like if there are certain industries that have their key players that you really need to connect with. So, for example, in the digital marketing space, with being, like the organic SEO, GBP, LSA, local services ads experts, some of the key players that I follow or try to connect with are Rand Fishkin, Darren Shaw, Joy Hawkins, Ben Fisher, Amy Toman, people like that. They've kind of been the ones that I've been following. They have newsletters, they have podcasts, they have webinars, things like that. I've always followed them, read them, watched them, and those are the people that have helped me. Every industry is going to have them. So you just have to find your people in your industry and, get connected, follow them.
No, I think that's a great kind of two pieces of advice there. Is like one, all those people you mentioned are great follows. I follow all of them and are also people who have kind of, opened my eyes to SEO and everything that's going on in that space. And is also a way, kind of like you're saying as well, like a way to do that daily, keeping up to date. There's people that are industry leaders that are literally putting out, hey, here's what I'm doing, or hey, here's my insights. I know like Joy does a super awesome live show where she just goes on and like reviews people's GBPs and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
the kind of insights you can get from something like that is just unreal. Like if I could, go to my advertising agency and watch one of the higher ups, work into the day to day, I'm sure there's so many takeaways, but you don't get that opportunity all the time. So being able to
Right.
find people who are putting that information out there, I think is super huge. So great information, and definitely anybody listening, go out and connect with those people. Even if maybe you're not an SEO, knowing what's going on in other areas of marketing, I think has been one of the biggest game changers for me lately, and is definitely something helpful, I think, for young people. With
Definitely.
that though, yeah, definitely. With that though, Deepa, that was all the rapid fire value questions I have for you. I think, go back and listen to the last 10 minutes of this episode, and you definitely have a full list of stuff you can start doing this week. Just to, start, like I said earlier, tackling that big problem, whether it be, getting that first job, figuring out the job hunt in this crazy job market, navigating that first career. Maybe the manager's not the greatest, or, figuring out how you're going to make that next move. I think that's awesome, killer advice. And just, something that you can take and start doing in your day-to-day life to notice a difference. With that though, to kind of close things up, Deepa, I do have one last question for you. This is one that I like to ask to everybody I interview. It's something that I figured out in college. It was just a question that provided a ton of value for me, and gave me some insights that I'm still carrying around in my day to day. And I learn a ton from it every time. So if you could just for a second, kind of think back to, I guess for you getting into digital marketing, it was a little bit later in your career, but think back to, when you were at that 20 to 22-year-old level, you're very ambitious, ready to get out in the world, and, super on fire. You think you know everything a little bit, but you're also extremely ignorant. You have no idea where you're going to end up. You have no idea how things are going to play out, or, what kind of conversations are being had that you don't know about. But I guess if there was one thing that you could go back and tell that version of yourself, like, hey, do this differently, what would it be? And, what kind of difference would that have made nowadays?
Um, I would say maybe keep an open mind. Just because, if you're in college or whatever, and if you have a set major in your mind, um, you want to finish off that major, you think, okay, this is what my life is going to revolve in for the rest of my life. It may not, so just keep an open mind. Um, you can finish off your major and everything. Once you're in the workspace, if you don't love it, that's okay. And if you find yourself passionate about something else, that's okay too. It's very easy these days with all the free resources out there and even paid resources out there to make that career change. And it's never too late. But you definitely want to be happy. You want to be passionate about what you're doing. It is going to be for the rest of your life. So it'll take a little bit of effort, but it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that is just some killer advice. And I mean, if you want the proof behind that advice, go look at Deepa's LinkedIn. Like, she's done exactly that and made an awesome career out of it. And, kind of like you said earlier, got to, take a pause when you needed to focus on the family and everything like that. So just some awesome advice, and something that I think, everybody needs to be reminding themselves, especially early in your career. It's so easy to kind of, just let the negatives overwhelm you. All the different information, people getting promoted around you, people at higher levels around you, you're at the very bottom. It can be overwhelming. So just, hearing that is super refreshing. So, just thanks for sharing and kind of being vulnerable with us. And then, also flipping it into some great advice. That was just awesome. With that though, Deepa, that was all I had for you today. Obviously, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was awesome getting to chat with you, getting to, talk a little bit more deep about your experience. With that, I know Dipa Gandhi on LinkedIn. Is there anywhere else we can find you, your work, anything like that?
I am also the Platinum Google Business Profile Product Expert. So if you're aware of that site, I'm there. You'll find me there. And I work with 99 Calls as the Director of SEO. So if you need to reach out to me, you can find me there.
Yeah, definitely awesome. Well, thank you again, Deepa. It was awesome interviewing you, like I said, and have a great rest of your night. Thanks again for coming on.